Rightio, punters. It is time to preview the late slate of AFL Saturday night. I've got the Collingwood Magpies beating Port Adelaide, and I have the Western Bulldogs dishing out a storm to the Kangaroos. The top tips in this one, I'll give you up straight up for both games. Cover the line, Collingwood, game total under, Brodie Myercheck, 2+ goals, and Jason Horne-Francis, 25+ disposals. In the second game, we're going the -20.5 line for the Bulldogs, under 77.5 team total for the Kangaroos, and Sam Darcy, 3+ goals. Let's get into the preview of the first game. Don't forget to subscribe while we're getting there. Now, Collingwood got absolutely demolished by the Giants last weekend, 52-point losers. They scored just 52 points themselves. They still won the inside 50 count. I think it was 55-54. A lot of 50s in that game. And they have dominated Port Adelaide the last few games. They've won 4 in a row. They have won a heap of games at the MCG. Port Adelaide, they're like the perennial team that are fantastic in the regular season and then just bow out at the end because they just can't hack it. They're going to be without Zach Butters. Dan Houston has gone from Port Adelaide to Collingwood. They were two guys that had the most touches for Port Adelaide in these respective games last season. So now it's all down to Jason Horne-Francis essentially and a couple other guys that are going to try and pick up the scraps to thwart the Collingwood Magpies. I don't see it happening. Perryman was great last weekend against the Giants in a losing effort. I think he has done well to settle into this team straight away. In the matchup last season, the Pies just dominated possession, and that's how they won the game. Centre clearances, inside 50s, they took care of the ball, not a lot of turnovers, and I expect a bit of a rinse and repeat. That's what they do. They know their opponents, and they can get out and win. Port have covered in just 5 of 13 games at the MCG in the past 6 seasons. So that's a pretty telling statistic for me. Horne-Francis averaged career high of 21.8 disposals last year. And as I said, he'll be trying to pick up the scraps after with Butters being injured and Houston going to the Pies. Myercheck scored 17 goals in 8 games against Port Adelaide. I thought I had the numbers mixed up there. And kicked 3 in their matchup last season. So pen him in for a double in the Collingwood versus Port Adelaide game. Now, Bulldogs and North Melbourne. The Kangaroos had some pretty good player turnover in the offseason. They've brought in a bit of experience, but I don't think they've really addressed the defensive end. They gave up the most points per game to their opposition last season, and until I see their defensive structures this year, I'm not going to put my hard-earned behind them. The Bulldogs, on the other end of the scale, were the best defensive team last year, so that's why I'm taking the Kangaroos team total under. Look, I think they're going to be able to get out and score a little bit. I'm just hoping that it doesn't go over this 77.5 line. What is interesting here, my predictive models had this game finishing with about a 63 to 69 point margin to the Bulldogs. Now, as I said, a lot of player turnover. The Bulldogs have one of the longest injury lists to start a season that I've seen for a lot of years. No Bontempelli, Treloar out. There's just a heap of guys that are missing. But I still think they can score against this poor defensive team. So do I think it's going to be a very high-scoring game or a low-scoring game in general? And how does the difference go there? I still think the Bulldogs cover the 20.5 line. I don't think the 40-point difference in my models compared to what the bookies are giving out is kind of accounted for in the player movement. I still think the Kangaroos are dog shit on defense, and I think the Bulldogs are still good on defense because that's all about structures and players fitting in. What else do we look at? The Darcy kicked 7 goals in this thumping that the Bulldogs gave North Melbourne last year. He was one of the players that averaged the most goals per game for the Western Bulldogs. His accuracy wasn't great. I think it was about 50-something%, but I'm going to back him in to score 3+ in this one. I think the Bulldogs still have those opportunities. 3 of the last 4 wins being 40+ wins for the Western Bulldogs. They've won 7 in a row against North Melbourne. And as I said, they allowed the fewest points per game to their opposition in 2024. They're the top ones for the late slate of the AFL. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, let us know who you are picking in all the AFL games this weekend.